like to open introductions and administrative remarks, which I believe there are none. Correct. So now we'll move on to item number 2, public comment. You all are aware of the rules over on the side because you're regulars. So, Dr. Winters.
Needed a little spring. How's that?
Good.
I just wanted to note that tonight when I parked at this meeting, I realized I had not commended the Facilities Committee for changing the way in which visitors can park closer to the building. The first 2 places right by the pathway are now open for visitors, as well as the usual doors outside the lower door and right across the front. So you can go out and have easy access to those people who would like to attend meetings and visit the school district administration building. That there is very easy and convenient parking now, thanks to whoever did that.
That was Ken, it wasn't us.
I thought that might be the case, but I just want to.
I'd like to take credit for that, but it was all Ken.
I know what they're talking about.
But it is very helpful to the public, so thank you.
He also wearing nice bright colors.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Town Square. 4 comments. The first is regarding hooking up the stormwater for the middle school. I'm wondering if the stormwater management system has been certified that it is operating at 100% capacity. The reason I ask is I was kind of reflecting back to a much earlier time period, but I can assure you that stormwater was a major issue regarding the location of the middle school, which was a major issue in Wayne. And actually I had a great picture, which I don't know if I left back there, but oh, here it is. Here's a picture of, this was a group that was running for the school board, and this was the picture of the middle school that they used to justify the idea of moving the middle school. And there were different surveys that went around that would ask questions like, of people, of parents, would you like a dry site, or would you prefer having the site in the middle school? I mean, it was definitely a political issue. And to this day, I've heard conversations about hooking a system up and issues related to hooking the system up, and I just am wondering, where do we really stand 17 years later or whatever from this? So I'd like at some point to get some sort of response about that. I know you don't have that today, but
yeah,
but I think water still tends to be an issue here, and we were kind of guaranteed that it would be addressed and mitigated. And then again, reflecting back on prior meetings, I just wondered why the district wouldn't comment on whether it would be willing to renegotiate the tri-party agreement. The minutes state that the district has stopped monitoring the number of vehicles, which is a requirement of the agreement, because its equipment is no longer working. So I'm wondering if we don't have to abide by that part of the agreement, why don't we just disregard the rest of the agreement? I mean, I don't know how you can just partially honor an agreement. So bring that forward again. And related to that, I think I mentioned before, I think it would be a wonderful idea if the Board of Commissioners and the school board could get together and talk about some of these issues that overlap, like the tri-party agreement, stormwater, which I just mentioned, maybe the location of the trail related to Penn, the development of Penn, and any other issues with that development across the street, and open space issues, which involve the school district owning land that perhaps would be better shepherded or monitored or watched over by the township, like Martha Brown's Woods, things that we're not using but that we want to preserve for open space. And whose job is it to preserve open space? The township's job. And finally, Rental income last year was significantly lower at the high school, and I would again bring up, I think my impression is that we're working on looking at some of those policies related to renting our facilities, and I guess I go back to thinking that why should a former employee get like a sweetheart deal on renting our facilities? What's the rationale? And if a Radnor resident gets a discount, which is great for rental fees, doesn't it make sense that some percentage of the people using the field under this discount are Radnor residents? So that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Ms. Spurtle?
Good afternoon. How are you all? Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace in Maine. I have a question, I guess a follow-up on the bleacher question that I'd asked earlier, and that was where we stand on the bleachers. I understand from Todd's comments at the board meeting last week.
We tend to sit on the bleachers.
You can sit on them, is that?
Yes, where we stand.
I don't know, but you can't stand. I understand the band member,
Keeps you all
whoever
night.
climbs up on the bleachers.
Sorry, I apologize. My attempted humor.
And now we'll get to the safety issue,
Yes.
because yes, they can be.
Well, that's right, that's why we don't want to
And since you
stand on them.
cannot walk on them, with the band, with the instruments, that they kind of shake a little bit. At the end of the meeting, number one is, my understanding is that they're going to, do some welding, do some painting, dig some dirt to make them, or add dirt so they're a little firmer, but that's a cost to the school district. It's maybe a minimal cost, but it's still a cost, and then we're still reaching out, at least my understanding is RFPs were polled at the last meeting. They were rejected. Whether or not, the question I have is, yes, they.
No, we tabled it. We actually tabled
Oh,
it.
you tabled it.
Yeah, but we're having a whole big bleacher.
That's
update.
why I didn't understand why it was left at the end of
There's
Tuesday
a
night's meeting.
bleacher update on the agenda. It's actually the last thing on our agenda.
Yeah, I know it's on there, and so I was looking for some kind of an answer, because there's still the safety issue. I know they've been deemed safe, but
It's well under
not
cost.
only safety, I've heard a lot about bleachers over the last couple of years, and it's the one complaint that comes from students, teachers, staff, anybody that attends games. Then a question on the capital projects for the year. And once again, I know that the priority codes are guidelines, but there are still some items that fall in the one safety priority code that were listed in the different schools. Radnor High School has a couple, the bleachers, interior walls that are coming up in the 18-19 budget. My question on the final page of that, there's a capital improvement plan cost summary, and Michelle had summarized the $1.9 million that is needed for capital improvements in the 18-19 budget, which my understanding are still not in the 18-19 budget. But of that, there's an overage of the balance remaining of $12,000. And then it says less funds remaining from prior projects completed. If in the discussion about the capital improvements, about the bleachers and the monies that are going to be used for that, explain the Fund 10 use and the Fund 32 use. And if we're beginning to draw down these funds or monies from the general fund, there is going to be a point the district will reach where we're going to use all of those funds, and we'll no longer. Does that mean that other expenses will be, the monies will be found elsewhere, other expenses will be reduced, or the taxes, we'll have to increase more taxes? And
You're
one
gonna go
quick
D,
question.
all of the above.
All of the above. Hopefully not
But she-
taxes, it's too easy, we go out for taxes too easily in the school district.
As soon as, when you're finished, I'll address some of those things that you questioned.
Okay, great. And one other quick question, and now I can't think of it, so I'll address that at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
To some of the questions asked by Mrs. Spurtle, the capital plan that we looked at in the past, that is Fund 32. It has nothing to do with the committed fund balance that we have in Fund 10, which has roughly just under $7 million in it. We have not touched that. The 1.5 million that she was referencing is leftover money from multiple fiscal years that's accumulated in Fund 32. That can't actually be transferred back to Fund 10, so it must be used on capital. Where in the committed fund balance that's in Fund 10, that doesn't have to be used for capital projects. It could get realigned, and we talked about this a little bit today. So if you wanted to use that for instructional things, you have the ability just to uncommit that fund balance and assign it to something else. So unlike many districts that transfer their general fund excess over to Fund 32 for capital, we don't do that here in Radnor. We leave it in Fund 10, and we believe that gives us more flexibility for use.
Yeah, 'cause it can go, if it's in Fund 10, then you use it for anything, but once it goes to Fund 30, it's a one-way street to Fund 32.
Correct.
Once it goes in, it can't come back out unless it's for capital. Alright, so seeing no more public comment, right? Approval of the minutes from last time? I actually read them, and pretty good. You okay? Alright, minutes approved. And, number one, the board agenda action items for the next business meeting.
So we only have one board agenda action item. It's the donation of a band trailer from the Radnor High School band parents. They actually worked with Mr. Hearn on purchasing of the trailer to ensure that it had all the safety features that we would like. We will own the trailer, we will license the trailer, and we will insure the trailer once they receive it. So we'll be asking for that to be accepted.
Yes, just ask a question, is that a replacement of a trailer, or it's just something we've never had before? Because I see one sitting on, across the street from Radnor Elementary.
We do have multiple band trailers. Do you know for sure if it's a replacement? Or I was under the understanding that they needed 2 trailers, that one trailer was not enough, but I'm not certain.
Oh, I thought it was a replacement.
You think it's a replacement? We'll get the answer for you, and we'll let you know before the meeting. Thank you.
I remember the days when we could fit 6 of us in the pickup and one bus with the cheerleaders. Come a long way. Okay, and transportation, update on the propane buses, Mr. Hart. Push the green button. There you go.
You should have in front of you information concerning the propane presentation. The date range is 2/8/16 to 4/1/18. These are the same exact buses that we did a presentation on January 2017. Some of the interesting parts to the presentation that jump out at you are in 2018, the column to the right lower. The propane this year is $1.10 a gallon. Back in 2017 it was $1.11, so propane actually came down a penny a gallon, where diesel went up from $1.64 to $1.81. Some of the facts and figures on the sheet we'll try and explain. Since 2007, diesel engine design has dramatically changed. There are a lot of hoops you have to jump through due to all the emission standards. New EPA certified diesel buses have become much more expensive and difficult to maintain in order to meet the new standards. Diesel engines require a number of additions, including particulate filters and complex emissions after treatment devices. Prolonged idle times and low speed stop and go driving has proven to cause premature failures of injectors, turbochargers, EGR valves, and lead to extended out of service time. This is one of the issues that Radnor is experiencing right now in our fleet. 2 poor applications for this type diesel technology are school buses and trash trucks, because of the stop and go nature of the vehicles. They go 50 yards stop, 50 yards stop, sometimes not even 50 yards if you're on 320, something like that. This technology is built to be over the road. where you're getting the bus up to normal operating temperature and you're running it and you're getting a lot of airflow through the system. I spoke with the transportation director at Temple the other day, and he noted they just had to turn in the trash truck at what they expected to be half life cycle because of the fact it was constantly breaking down, and we are constantly running into some of the same issues. The reason that was actually a natural gas vehicle, and they're turning to us for some of our input because they're looking to go into propane too. I think most of your large fleets, school bus, trash truck companies, they're moving toward the propane because it's an easy fix. With 2 years and over 100,000 miles of propane use, I am delighted to report our results continue to be outstanding and expected to improve. When I say that I expect to improve, if you're looking at the sheet, the cost per mile for the diesels, we expect that over the next couple of years to go up, as some of the features in the lower right-hand column will show you. Some of the repair items on the diesels are going to be quite pricey as we further advance down the road. Diesel EGR valves, which are expected to last about 60,000 miles, are $582. Diesel EGR coolers, $681. Turbochargers, we've already had to replace 2 at a cost of $22.45. One of the things that jumps out at you also is the diesel exhaust system. Because of all the components and emission parts on the diesel exhaust system, we're expecting that cost to be somewhere in the area of $7,882 for an exhaust system, when the same exact exhaust, well, not the same exact one, an exhaust system on a propane exhaust will cost about $3,000. So the numbers for the diesel buses, we expect that to go up. I would not be surprised to see the cost of the 72 cents per mile be over $1 within another year, possibly 2. Some of the improvements we're experiencing and we're expected to soon experience are lower maintenance costs. Propane produces fewer emissions, which have proven to reduce wear and tear on an engine and its fuel system technology. If not for factory warranties, maintenance intervals for propane buses could be extended, which would provide immediate savings on oil and filter changes. Oil and filter changes are perpetual maintenance costs that adds up quickly when dealing with a large school bus fleet. Our Cummins engines require 17 quarts of oil, and while the district's propane fleet requires only 7 quarts. And engine oil is $10.96 a gallon, so you can see where that would amp up pretty quickly. The other thing we're looking to improve is our downtime. A propane fleet avoid the vehicle downtime and the associated labor costs caused by the continuous maintenance and removal from service necessary to clean diesel particulate filters. Emissions. Unlike diesel technology, propane does not require complex emission systems, additional filters, or fluids to comply with EPA clean air standards. The green fleet. The shorter height of younger students puts them face to face with a black cloud of harmful emissions that can aggravate asthma and cause other health issues. You really notice this when you're doing the bus evacuations that we do twice a year, and these little guys are jumping off the buses, and when they're standing, they're exactly the same height as the tailpipe. Now, the buses aren't running at the time, but it just gives you some perspective on the younger kids and what they're facing.
Or if you're behind a diesel or a propane, you got the top down in your car. That's much nicer to be behind the propane.
Cold starts. When the temperatures drop during winter months, diesel fuel tends to freeze, which leads to clogged fuel filters, fuel lines, and often an out-of-service bus. Preventive maintenance measures such as fuel additives and anti-gel agents can help, but with an extended cold snap can dramatically increase maintenance costs. Propane requires no fuel additives and requires reliable starting in any temperature and takes significantly less time to warm up. But also during cold starts, you have to bring in a crew of folks an hour and a half early to start the buses, make sure they're running. They will start, they warm up a little bit. And also with the diesel buses, you have block heaters that have to be plugged in. I can't give you a number on what the electricity is going to cost, but some of these block heaters are drawing 6, 7, 8 amps, And that's also something that the propane buses don't need.
And the diesel buses all have 2 batteries?
Yep.
And the propane has 1?
Yep.
So that's another.
And finally, down the road, one of the major benefits we'll be able, now this is further down the road, this is another 10, 12 years possibly down the road or longer, but it sure would be nice to be able to remove 27,000 gallons of fuel from below ground. We have a 15,000, a 10,000 diesel, and a 2,000 unleaded fuel at our compound. All underground.
Great. So, have you had any issues with the propane buses versus the
The only
diesel?
con that we've had experience at all is it's a little bit of a slower fueling. But even that, we're working with a vendor now who seems to think that we should be able to get that up to the same speed as a diesel.
And the range? I know there was an issue
The range is a
before.
little bit limited. Back in 2017, we figured out we're looking at a range of about 332 miles. So the range issue is a little bit of a problem, but so far we have not experienced that we've had an issue yet with it. But we also, if we need to run up to Penn State or something like that, we'll put it on a diesel.
Yeah, the diesel line, which you can't refill.
Right.
Propane now.
Well, actually, it's becoming more and more available. A lot of U-Haul truck refilling stations have propane, and you can fill up there. But unless you want to take a lot of planning ahead of time, it's just easier to put a diesel bus on
Yeah.
it.
Well, plus when they're on the highway, it's a good chance to
Clear them
it's like
out a
when you
little
have the
bit.
old car, you can blow them out.
It's the diesel engine is great. It's the emission systems that they put on
Yeah.
the vehicles.
Yeah. What's the LOF?
Lube oil filter.
Lube oil, okay.
Just because of the reduced amount of
Yeah.
oil, you
Yeah.
see where that, and that would actually, we're looking, we would probably be 2, maybe 3 to 1 on the oil changes.
Yeah. That's great.
Because we're looking at these filters coming out and they're clean. I have nothing, with a fleet maintenance background, I can tell you that we're on the right path.
Right.
Absolutely. There's a lot of other alternative fuels available. Natural gas is not the answer because of the infrastructure. Electric school buses, I went to down at DCIU, they wanted to have to show us an electric bus. Bluebirds come out with an electric bus. It wasn't at they couldn't make the meeting because it can't drive itself. They had to flatbed this thing everywhere they bring it. So the truck somehow broke down. The vehicle wasn't able to get to where it had to go. And the other thing is, you're looking $300,000 to $400,000. They can't even give you a number yet, but they're looking $300,000 to $400,000 a bus. Down the road, 10 years,
Right.
I think it may be a good answer. Right now, propane is absolutely, without a doubt, a
Yeah,
good
those numbers
solution
look
for
great.
us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you guys have anything?
It's adequate. I know we talked about this the other day during our
Mhm.
visit, but, you know, 10 years out or 20 years out, I mean, what are we looking at in terms of replacing diesel vehicles versus propane? You know, what percentage might we be looking at in the near future? Is there, you think that at some point we'd replace all the vehicles, or?
I think we're on the right path now with replacing 4 or 5 a year. It's, I think that's the right way to
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
because technology is constantly changing.
Right, yeah. Good, that's great.
Good to hear. Anybody got anything? Do you have anything pithy?
Nothing pithy, except I would just say, I would like to say to John, just thank you for all that, thank you for this report, but also, looking at this winter and actually spring, your department has just, done a phenomenal job.
We've got a
For all
good
your
crew.
leadership And everything that you've done to handle the weather and all that you've done, it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that.
Yeah, we have an
Great job
outstanding
on
crew, we
that.
really
Yeah,
do.
great.
Maintenance-wise, mechanic-wise, monitor-wise, office staff-wise, we have a good crew.
Yeah, you guys do great.
Just a quick question, for the 18-19 budget, do we have, can you refresh my memory about what's in there in terms of maybe bus trade-out?
There are buses in there for 18-19. I don't remember the number right off the top of my head. We were doing 4, and then there were some years going out where we were moving it up to 5, but I don't remember exactly how many are in to be replaced next year. I think it's 4
I
that we
believe it's 4.
spoke about. John is currently looking to replace some vans. He's been working on that. Instead of buses, we do have a van fleet as well, and those vans are getting tired.
They're getting tired.
So he's been working with Chris Cavalli in my office to replace those. But we'll be going over the capital plan again. At the May meeting, we will go over that again in facilities before we finalize the budget. We still have some changes that we need to make to that capital plan. We've become aware of more things since we reviewed it in March or February, I believe it was March. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Two of them are on the agenda this evening.
Does the savings in the propane fuel, I know it might not amount to a ton, but does that help offset? Is that an unanticipated offset against expenses, like investing in new buses? Does that help?
I think it will down the road. We're not experiencing the huge maintenance savings yet because the buses we used here were the last 14 buses we purchased. 2013, 2015 were diesels, 2017, 2019 were propane. The propane buses have not accumulated a lot of miles on them yet. So we're not saving the amount of money yet. It's down the road, and it's going to continue to increase as the diesel buses get more miles on them.
So that requires much maintenance when we do, like all cars. As they get older, that's when the maintenance costs go.
There's half the parts on them, half the items that are listed. The propane bus doesn't have an EGR valve, it doesn't have an EGR cooler, it doesn't have a turbocharger, it doesn't have half of the things that the diesel engine has to have on it to meet EPA standards.
And we haven't gotten to the point where we need to replace a propane bus yet, so we're not certain. Hopefully we will get a little more use out of them than we're currently getting out of the diesels. So that'll be something that we look at. But to answer Amy's question, the replacement of the buses are paid for out of Fund 32. All of the expenses to transport the children are paid for out of Fund 10. So they're really in two separate places. But anything you can save in Fund 10, certainly you can reallocate that to something else, such as a transfer over to your capital. But John's absolutely right. We will need to look at our staffing as we get more and more propane buses on our fleet. We'll look at that. We've been reviewing gasoline consumption as well as propane consumption. And we actually did not spend as much on propane in 16, 17, the first year of the pilot, as we had thought we were going to. So we continue to refine that and make changes, and hopefully we'll have more answers as our buses get a little more miles and age to them.
Can you just explain, Michelle, what staffing has to do with switching over to propane?
Well, staffing switching over to propane, as John indicated, you could possibly need fewer mechanics because you have less repairs and maintenance. Currently, we don't believe that we have more staff than we need there, but it's something that we will need to look at and evaluate as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I ask one other question about our prior agenda item? It just occurred to me that if the van trailer is a replacement, the new one is replacing an old one, is the old one able to be sold or anything? Is that?
Michelle and I were actually just discussing, we've got to find out if it is ours or if it's the van's. If it's ours, it would be traded in.
Yeah.
And now the,
Can I just give one update? Mrs. Fertile just showed me the capital plan. There are 5 propane buses in the capital plan for 1890.
good.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And now we're to the trail.
So the Radnor Trail, we have a request to do a little bit of items regarding the trail, so I'll turn it over to you guys if you'd like to introduce yourself to those people that don't know you out there. And we also have Mike Christopher here since he's been dealing with the trail as well.
Hi, Peter Simone from Simone Collins.
Chuck Curry, Simone Collins.
And thanks for your time. We'll try to be brief. I think you have a plan that we sent to Mr. Stitzel. We need to dig some holes, basically, pour some water in them, and test how quickly the soil absorbs the water. This is called the NPDES permit, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. It's an outgrowth from the Clean Water Act to ensure that we're not causing pollution in the form of sediment. It's a permit that we have to obtain by law. As I said, we need to dig some holes, keep them up for a few hours, pour some water in, test how quickly or how slowly the water infiltrates, and the engineering design will be based on those infiltration rates. So that's a real quick explanation, but it really is the essence of what we need to do. And we need to get your permission for sign whatever, the township needs to get your permission, sign whatever forms we need to sign that you require to get that permission. And we hope to do this next week. However, Comcast, we found out, does not have tracers in their lines. So we need Comcast to locate their lines before we can do this. We do a PA1 call, all our due diligence. We don't think we're near any utilities, but we still have to go through our due diligence to make sure we don't disrupt anything. So that would be our holdup at this point. And the other thing is we have to wait for dry weather. We can't do it in the middle of when we're getting tons of rain like we had a couple weeks ago.
Dry soil work. So this doesn't have to do with the township stormwater runoff regulations. It's the federal.
No, this is all county. This is the county conservation
County.
district.
Okay.
We actually create very little runoff with this trail.
Right, I was
I mean, we're going from
wondering
5 feet to 10 feet
Right.
in some places. It's not a lot of water, but we still have to get the permit because by law, when we disturb over an acre,
Yeah.
we have to get the permit. We're also doing similar tests in West Wing Preserve.
Questions? Can you go to the next sheet? Because
We have some print copies too if you want.
You have a PDF if you want to look at.
I had a whole bunch of questions about the whole.
And is this an appropriate time to discuss the location of the trail?
Oh,
And
yeah.
that piece is what we wanted to talk about. I didn't know if that was I mean, there's been some discussions about where the trail will, it looks like the holes we're digging are, you know, along Lancaster, but then also the holes are also along, was it King of Prussia Road there?
Yeah, that's what
And
I'm
there's-
looking at the
Correct.
second sheet. It
Right.
looks like you're
Close
gonna
that.
dig holes up along King of Prussia on our side, but we heard that the trail was gonna be on the other.
That's a rumor,
Penn
okay?
Medicine side.
That's not correct. Our project has always been for the trail to be on the side of the high school. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I could go through them with you if you like. Also, Township is working with Penn Medicine to develop other trails on the other side, because you have to keep in mind, in 15 or 20 years, it's gonna be a big trail system. It's gonna go all through the township, and there's gonna be a lot of people using it. The new development across the street is gonna have a lot of people there using that trail system. That's gonna connect to points, I guess it's east towards Villanova. Also, in evaluating whether we could switch the trail from the high school side to the other side of King of Prussia Road, it would require coming along Route 30, having students cross over to that side of the road, going north on King of Prussia Road for a distance, and then crossing the road again, which is very basically not a good safety measure to have them cross the road twice when they don't have to. So, a lot of reasons why we've recommended, and the township has maintained, we'd like the trail on the high school side. It's replacing the existing sidewalk along King of Prussia Road, and really the main reason is safety.
Part of the point of the trail was to get to the Radnor train station. Wouldn't it make more sense to have them all on the same side of the street as the train station?
That was just one, piece of the pie. We have multiple train stations. We have Penn Medicine. We have all the development. We have all the workers. So yes, it is one of the goals to get to the train station. But that's just one.
Yeah, one of the Penn Medicine things the township is asking Penn Medicine to do is create that crosswalk from the opposite side of King of Prussia Road,
Right.
where the train station is, over to the
Well,
trail
I was-
at the high school.
I wasn't even thinking the R100, I was thinking the R5. Or
Yeah.
Whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
Really Thorndale.
Yeah.
We want to connect the both.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, because that's on the other side of the street, so. So why don't you just put the whole thing on Penn Medicine and the other buildings?
Because this is, we also see this as a way the high school students are going to get to the school, and
No, they don't know.
Well, we also have to consider Radnor residents. It would be great to consider all the people that work in the area.
And we're just trying not to kill all the trees on the.
We're gonna be sending the school district a report from the township arborist. He inspected all the trees along King of Prussia Road, and you will see they have a very limited life expectancy. They're not in good shape. We haven't got to the point of submitting that to you yet, but, you know, as landscape architects, we look at these trees as renewable resources. We think we're gonna replace those trees and give you trees that are gonna have a much longer lifespan.
Yeah, but we're just, you know, right now it's all shady, and we're just, I mean, I think we said last time we were talking about the trail, you're gonna take out trees that are providing a bunch of shade now, and by the time my kids are out in the audience raising, you know, rabble rousing as 40-year-olds, those trees might be providing shade.
Or some of those trees might come down due to a storm. They're in very poor condition, so we'll submit that report to the school district.
We're just surprised because the last time we talked about the trail, we were told it was gonna go, most of it, part of it was gonna run on the other side of the road, so.
With all due respect, we didn't tell you that. We're the consultants with the township. It was an option that was being discussed.
And so, I mean, I guess that's the piece, because I think that it sounded like University of Pennsylvania was open to having it on their property, having the trail there.
And
So
they are.
They are, so they're, so
There's
that, so
gonna be
that
trails
is
on
accurate.
both
So
sides of
they-
the road.
Oh, there's gonna be trails on both sides of the
Correct.
road.
There's lots of constraints when you go to the other side of the road. If you look in the lower right-hand corner of that slide, that tree area, that's actually a very large detention basin, if you recall. And there's very little room between the road right-of-way and that detention basin. So in order to construct the trail along that green area, you'd have to create a structure, basically a bridge or a boardwalk, along that whole side up to where that driveway is. So I mean, there are lots of issues with putting the trail on that side.
Well, they were talking about going along Route 30, going across the existing crosswalk, and then there's actually a path now that people use under the blue route, up to
Right.
the delivery road.
Correct.
And eliminating that stretch from the corner of 30 and King of Prussia up to the delivery road or up to Raider Road. Because then that would be on Penn Medicine side.
As we said, there's gonna be a trail on that side, but it's not gonna run down along that basin.
So why would there be a trail on two sides of the road that?
Because if you look at the trail master plan, and it's available on the township website.
Yeah. Oh, I
this
know,
is
it
a
says that
very-
there's gonna be
This
trails
is
like
a
all
very
over the place.
large system, and on a busy, this is probably gonna be one of the heaviest concentrations of trail use in the whole township. Because you have a school, you're gonna have, I forget how many units of residential at the new Penn Medicine, you're gonna have offices, there's gonna be some small retail there, you've got access to the train station. I mean, you know, I just listened to your very good presentation about the buses, and hopefully in 20 or 25 years, you might be able to reduce bus use by students actually using trails. And I know it's a huge cost. I mean, we're thinking long-term. This is a long-term effort the township is looking at in terms of getting kids out and adults on these trails. It's a big system.
Andrew, do you have anything? Meredith? Just coming in, catching up. Andrew, do you have anything?
I'm taking it in, I'm looking, and I just want to echo what Mike has been saying, that it's a slight surprise, but I think that it warrants a deeper look at, you mentioned the master plan. But I'd be interested in the arborist report, when that comes forward.
Right, we will be getting that too.
And, I mean, there's not enough for me to look at right here, you know, to visualize anything further than what you've said so far. It all sounds plausible and reasonable, but to look at the big picture would yield more productive insights, I'd say.
Well, you know, at some point, we'd be very happy to come in and give the school board or this committee a presentation of the entire trail master plan. I mean, I think you do have to look at the big picture to understand the whole system. You know, as you know, the township built $1.75 million to build this section of trail. This is part of the system, and it's going to be a continuing effort over a period of many years to get the system totally up and running. So, you know, we'd be happy to do that for you or for the whole board at some point.
And just so you know, I mean, the materials that we got for this meeting consist of, will comprise this map that you see here and the other image.
Well, that, yeah, you weren't here for. You weren't on the board for a while.
I wasn't on the board for the map, so
Sorry, that's why.
there's a limit to how much I can offer
Yeah,
myself.
Yeah, we were just here to present the fence and gain access.
And again, if you wanna come individually to our office, sit down with us, happy to do that too, if that works for anyone, anytime.
And one of the things that I think, the holes, it's easy, right? That's not an issue, and we can catch Andrew up also on the previous extensive presentation you gave on the whole trail thing. But given that there's been this discrepancy in vision between Penn Medicine and the township and where the trail is going to go, and now it's on both sides, I think we're kind of learning new stuff every meeting. Is there a way to get one coordinated map that everybody signs off on so that we know it's got, what Penn's vision is coincides with the township, and then the school district can see one unified vision on a map? That's, I think, what's tripping us up, and I apologize for you feeling like we're challenging, but we're hearing different things at the meetings, right? What did you say, Mike? We learned something new? Yeah.
If I could interject this moment. So several months ago, at one of our board meetings, and when our consultant, I'm Steve Nursing from Radnor Township, our consultant was there. They were directed to look at the feasibility of exactly of what you said of going on to Penn Medicine property. We have spoken with them. Everything we had, the grants, everything was based on the scenario we laid out to you at the previous meeting. Doesn't mean we're not going to look at the other possibility, but at this point, it's leaning towards this. We don't want to endanger the grant by moving this over, but we want to do what's best for the school district, for our residents, which is the same as for the school district. So Penn Medicine did agree to extend their trail at one of our meetings under the blue route. Tomorrow night, they'll be in front of the Radnor Township Planning Commission seeking a recommendation on final plan approval. I have those plans on a thumb drive. Peter has had previous versions. So I think what we can do is, if you wish for us to present the Radnor TAC Trail, which is what Peter is talking about, which is the entire system, which would take you from here eventually to Haverford Township. I'll make sure he has those plans, and perhaps he can, in another larger Google Earth view or on one of yours, he can superimpose what's required of Penn Medicine and their trail. So they're required by our subdivision land development ordinance to have some sidewalk or trail in the front. They also have the trail going back. So, as Peter had said, we were here really tonight to go over the stormwater management test pits, but if you would like, at the next meeting, we could come back and give you, or Peter and Jeff would give you, a full-blown presentation on what the TAP trail is, the entire master plan. It is on our website. I can forward you that link. So the plan was adopted by the Board of Commissioners, which shows the trail network about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
If that would give this board, this commission, some context as to where we stand.
With all due respect, I do think we've received that information. The thing that, and I could be the only one, but I think the thing that, we've talked about this from time to time, when there is a project that involves both the township and the school district, it would be nice, I think, to have a collaborative conversation, even though there are certain things that are strictly within the township purview and things that are strictly within the district purview, but we have pieces of the same project and we don't talk to each other. We hear reports in silo sometimes. There have been other meetings, but in general, for the whole board to understand what's happening, is there a way to have a collaborative conversation as opposed to silo reports? And I think that visually, what we were asking for is not so much the whole system at this point, but of the pieces that involve our property. What parts, where is the Radnor Trail? Where on the map is the Penn Trail? And where do those trails lead? Where do they cross over? Ones should be in one color and the others in the other color. I mean, that kind of thing. So that, and we know that everybody is coordinated around the same thing. That may be going on, but it hasn't come off that way to us. We seem to get a little bit of new information at every facilities meeting.
Valid points all, and I do concur, and I think we all agree that this should be a collaborative process. So however we can do that, if I don't know the rules of the school board. If there's a subcommittee of the subcommittee, or we would meet.
Oh, where is?
I mean, so you're the facility subcommittee. So do we meet in this forum, or could we meet with Mr. Stitzel, go over with him on a more casual basis, which he then takes back to you folks, and then we come and follow it up? I agree, this should be a collaborative effort, because when it's all said and done, it's traverses the high school. So however you wish to do
having
so.
Mr. Stitzel come back would sort of replicate what the issue is here already, with all due respect to Mr. Stitzel. Just having a Penn person, a Simone Collins person, Township, all three parties together, having this discussion. It doesn't have to be expansive, but the thing that's the confusing part for us is this part of the trail. So how do we all land together in the same room on whose trail is where at the end of the day?
And I think maybe we can come back to another facilities meeting. I think the essential question for the school board has been just that question of, it's been left out there, and you mentioned the feasibility of the trail maybe moving over. Is that still being looked at, the feasibility, or is that?
If I can address that, we would not recommend that for one main reason: safety. One of the first submissions, and we're just about to submit this one with the PennDOT, it's called the safety submission, and it is what it sounds like. PennDOT's not going to approve a trail that comes to the corner of Route 30 and King of Prussia Road, comes up a certain distance, crosses King of Prussia Road, goes another several hundred feet, and crosses the road again as the main trail. They just won't approve it. More importantly, no one will use it. Okay, if I'm on that trail, I'm going to continue on the sidewalk. So it's a safety issue. That would be 2 unnecessary crossings, as opposed to 1 crossing, which would be from the train station across to the high school. So it's all well and good, and I understand how this transpired about, well, maybe it's here, maybe it's there, but it won't pass safety review. I can guarantee you that. And so we're happy, as I said earlier, to coordinate this, to show everything. This is ultimately the Township Trail, whether it's on Penn Medicine or not. It's going to be a public access trail, and I think it's going to be a great system. But in terms of this project and this funding and PennDOT approval, they're not going to approve that side crossing, just because it's not safe.
So could we, Mike, somehow work with setting up this joint something where we're all talking together?
So tomorrow night, all the representatives of Penn Medicine will be at Planning Commission, which I attend, engineering's liaison to Planning Commission. So if it would please this board, if you want to pick a date that you would want us collectively back, I'll reach out to their representatives tomorrow night and ask if, so Michael Kissinger is the lead engineer from Pannoni for that project. He would probably be he would serve you best in representing what's going on their site. Myself, Jeff, and Peter would be here, Township and Township consultants. We could have those plans, as you noted, red over here, green over there. The 2 consultants could work on one sheet that shows what's going on, and we could present that to you. If you give, I will make that request to Penn Medicine. I can't speak for them, but I will make that request to them tomorrow night, or actually tonight.
It's not up to me. It would really be up to the advice of the whole committee and our superintendent and admins.
I think what we can do is have Mr. Stitzel communicate with you after this meeting and tomorrow about, I think the way the board jump in, but I think the way the last conversation we had at this level was, there was thoughts that the trail could possibly be moved, over to the Penn side. Now we're hearing that there's reasons why it couldn't be. And I think really we need to set up that conversation to talk about what is the definitive decision. Is that decision been made? And then understand what that decision is, why it is, and then come back to this facilities meeting on what is that decision. Because for board members, I think we need to talk with the township. If I recall our last meeting, there's a lot of concern about the trees, and there's concern about losing shade that are important to the kids involved in athletics. There's a lot of concern about what it would actually mean to some of the fields. And I think some of the board members here became very relaxed about it once they heard, oh, it looks like it can simply move. Now we're hearing, no, it possibly can't simply move. So I think the meeting we need to set up is, there needs to be a little pre-work that Mr. Stitzler will follow up with you to talk about, let's gather where we are with it, and then we could schedule for our next facilities meeting, exactly what is the status update and what do we need here from this school board about the trail.
And to Ms. Goldman's point, so about the compartmentalized information, so as opposed to us just sending you the arborist report and sending you the plans, we need to compile all of this for that one presentation. We'll give you everything we can up front, but I'll have our arborist here too, because although he writes the report, you may wish to ask him, well, I do this often, John, that tree looks fine to me, and he'll say, oh no, it's got X, Y, Z. He's an expert. That's his area of expertise. John Rockwell Hosbach. He's an independent arborist. So he doesn't own a tree care company. This is what he does as a consultant. So I'll work with Mr. Stitzel. I'll make the request to Penn Medicine. I'll let the township manager know, and we'll try to pull all this together in one cohesive manner for you folks. I'm going to ask Peter here now to show on paper why that trail going to the opposite side, why he feels that's not, he should show that to show why that doesn't look safe or why he doesn't think it'll pass muster in that respect.
We don't have to do that now until you do all the other work, because we're running out of time.
Well, no, I mean, I would do that all at our next meeting.
Oh, next meeting, yeah.
Try to give you folks,
try
to give you folks everything we've talked about.
Now I think we're fine with you.
The 3 times we've been here, give it to you all one shot.
Okay. Yeah, because we just had a whole discussion, so now we can talk about poles.
Yes.
So
And just to address Mr. Basham's concern, we've never said we're going to impact the fields, and we are not going to impact the fields. So if the trees come down, the shade will go away, but also there'll be a new tree in its place, and it'll take time for that shade to come back to the size it is. But again, based upon the health of the tree, it's going to be a better tree in the long run. So we understand that, but that's definitely a downside, losing the trail. Excuse me, the shade. The other thing I just want to mention is that we had, last meeting, we had talked about walking the trail, and it's been such miserable weather. And we had suggested this Thursday and Friday, we can switch that. We want to find a date that works for you. Beforehand, we go out and spray paint the edges of the trail and the center line, not the whole thing, but every so many feet, so you can see where it's proposed. Happy to schedule that with you. We'd like to do it soon. And getting back to the holes, I don't know if we'll get out there next week, but we would like to get that approval in place so we can do that testing.
I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that could all be part of the coordinated effort. I think, I think the walking the trail and giving board members the opportunity to walk it will be important as well, so people can actually see exactly the spray paint, where things are going to be, where things are going to move, helps with that discussion. So I think we should tie that into kind of a larger plan of 1 week follow-up with a larger discussion, when the walk happens and all of those pieces come together. That's great.
Yeah, the walk will not be happening this week. We'll make contact and try to get some dates a couple weeks out.
Mr. Stitzel did faithfully reach out to us, it's just that we couldn't coordinate, unfortunately,
I
those 2
think
dates.
if we can perform the walk before we do the, for lack of a better term, the cohesive meeting, I think it'll bring everything together for you, as opposed to, so we live looking at plans, not everybody does, so walking it can, truly in your mind's eye, you can realize what our request is, what we wish to do, and then when we come back with all the parties, I think you'll have fresh questions. Maybe some of your questions will get answered on the walk. You're going to get new questions, and we'll try to put your minds at ease on the whole project.
When's our next facilities meeting? May 1st? Wow, that's soon. Okay.
We'll see. Let's let Mr. Stitzel look, and we'll see what makes sense.
So we just need your confirmation that we can work with these test holes. And
I don't
we
see
would
a
have,
whole lot of problem with the holes.
We'd have our solicitor
a whole bunch of questions.
make an agreement with the trail system in order to make that happen.
It's too easy.
He's happy with the whole thing.
I'm happy with the whole, but do you have any questions about the whole?
So we can move forward with the holes?
We can move forward with the whole?
Dig away.
They have our
Do we know-
wholeheartedly approved.
Thank you very much.
This is like just a standard form, or is it something you have to draw up in
Yeah,
special?
I'll have to put something together.
We'll get a whole agreement about the whole track.
Thank you very much for that permission.
Thank you.
And bringing all these items to light. We'll address all your concerns.
Thank you very
Thanks, Steve.
much.
Appreciate it. Next up is the track.
We had previously discussed the high school track at a prior facilities committee meeting, and Mrs. Booker wanted to have some more information about the track. She seemed to have a recollection that that track should have lasted for, I think she said 40 years or something like that.
25 years.
So I did a little research. I reached out to Brian Metterling, who now works for the company Nagel Athletic Services. Their company has changed names, but they're the people who actually resurfaced that track. So there's a little history about the track that I think everyone on this committee should know. The track was installed in 2002. It was a brand new track when it was put in. It was designed to be resurfaced twice without having to be remilled. So it was resurfaced in 2008. Tracks typically last between 8 and 12 years, depending on the surface that's put on. The surface that was put on in 2008 is expected to last 10 years. So 10 to 12, it's approaching its time that it needs to be replaced. We did walk the track with Brian Metterling. He came out. They also do tennis courts, so we had to look at the tennis courts when he was out speaking with us. He believes that our track is in really pretty good shape. He spoke with the coach, the track coach. The track coach says he doesn't have any complaints about the track. And we also talked about the turf field. The turf field on Prevost, we know is going to need to be replaced in a few years. It's been being tested, and we'll continue to do that testing every year to make sure that the turf is safe. We think we can get about 2 years from the turf as well. So what we're recommending is that we do the turf replacement and the track at the same time. So we'll continue to monitor that with the turf to make sure that the turf is as thick as it needs to be. Todd can address that much better than me. And then what we'll plan on doing is doing both of those projects at the same time. So you will see those projects move on the capital plan. We think that makes a lot of sense. We do have a large crack in the tennis courts. We had someone out to look at that today, or yesterday. We'll be getting a price and we'll be coming back with you regarding that information. The tennis courts, the pot of 6 is cracked the entire length of where the net is installed. The company has told us that that's a pretty easy fix. We think we can maybe do that this summer and move forward with that and move that actually up on the capital plan. We expect that will be somewhere in the range of $75,000 versus the hundreds of thousands to do the replacement for the field and to do the resurfacing of the track. So the next time the track, if we resurface the track, the next time it would need to be milled, that would be around 2028. So we'll make a notation that that's when that track would be estimated to be remilled on the capital plan. So moving forward, who's ever taking over operations or doing operations will know when to anticipate that.
Can I ask a quick question? I want to make sure my notes are accurate here. So it was installed in 2002. It needed to be resurfaced twice. The first time it was done in 2008, and then it would need it in another 8 to 10 years. So this year we're resurfacing it. We're not replacing it.
We're not recommending that we resurface it currently. What we're recommending, based on the information we got from Brian Metterling, who's from Nagel, that we wait to resurface that track until we replace the turf field on Prevost. Those are all together in the same area, and we would do the resurfacing then as well as the turf replacement. So that could happen in 2019, it could happen in 2020. It just kind of depends on the testing on the field.
I thought I had heard that we're replacing the track. We're not. We're waiting to resurface it. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, you did the track now, and then you did the field, you did the track by replacing the field.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense to do those two projects at the same time.
And there was concussion testing on our turf field. It's called GMAX testing. And what they do is they see the resistance, and we are perfectly fine with all the measurements. I think there was 15 or 20 measurements taken throughout the field. We're fine on all those causes, so we should not have any issues. And we'll have that GMAX testing done every year just to make sure we're within those ranges.
And June? Alright. Moving on, bleachers. Quick update and then,
We'll try and do this quickly. This was tabled at the last board meeting. We had received 3 proposals for the RFP that we put out. Since we put out that RFP, we've actually had conversations with various architects, and we had someone come out and look at the bleachers in the fall, but we also had someone come out and look at the bleachers this morning. And it was chilly on the field this morning. One of the things that we've spoken about is that, and we're making the recommendation that we reject these proposals, is because a bleacher company, and confirm this with numerous architects, can actually assist us with the installation of those bleachers. And we had originally thought we would replace those bleachers in the summer, but based on the conversations we had with the bleacher company today, it makes more sense for us to move that to a winter project and replace those bleachers in the winter, just because it's a substantial savings. Everybody's trying to do it in the spring.
And just to correct, you weren't saying originally this summer, just originally the time of year.
Right, the time of year, correct.
yeah, just in general.
Just
We
in
like-
general.
In general,
And-
we weren't looking at this.
And one
It's
of
like
the
you paint
things.
the inside of your house in the winter, because the painters are all.
So one of the things we talked about was, with the bleacher representative, Mr. Sauer, is that if we wanted to do those bleachers this summer, we would have actually had to order our steel probably in November, do the bid for that, or get ready to do that, and actually order it by the end of January. So we're not in any ability to do that this summer. He said we might be able to get it done this summer if we push the project forward, but that would be substantially more expensive. We're not recommending that. We're gonna have our guys do some work to the bleachers, and then what we'll do is we'll look to do those bleachers and get a price for Yankee Field bleachers as well. We would, go ahead. We would like permission to hire an architect though, so we can coordinate the project of looking at the other possibility of improvements to the field. We would like to coordinate the architect with the bleacher people so that we're working on that together, but we do need permission to hire an architect. Not required to do an RFP. We can hire an architect, we could do interviews, we could do a variety of things, but you're not required to do an RFP. So we would like to reject these. We'd like permission to move forward to hire an architect to help us look at some of the other possible improvements on the field, and then coordinate those projects for installation at a later date. We don't know if that's going to be in 2018-19 or if it'll be in 2019-20, but we do need to get moving on the project and coordinate two things together.
And this committee did agree to allocate money last year for that purpose.
And finance.
And the bleachers will be inspected again the week of Memorial Day.
Cool. Questions?
So again, so hiring an architect to do this now is different from the 3 architectural firms that submitted RFPs. You'd like to hire an architect, but it's gonna be different from the 3 architectural firms that submitted RFPs that they're now rejecting.
I would like to hire an architect. I don't know if we'll talk to these people or not talk to these people. We may, but we have architects that we've worked with in the past. Black and Hayes we've worked with. We've also worked with Gilbert Architects. They're familiar with our projects. And I would recommend that we look to use one of those architects that we've utilized in the past.
Almost as a project manager type, maybe not, because we're not a project, but just as a.
I think the change piece is the realization that the bleacher companies can design build. So the piece that has changed in meeting now with the bleacher companies is that they can design build, and that could save us some dollars. So they're willing to do, as a bleacher company, really provide us a free estimate, and they would then work with us with a design to decide if we wanted to go with them. We could save some dollars there on the architectural fees, but we would still want to look at an architect to contract with them to look at the whole, that campus area.
Right.
Because
Because the bleacher guys just does the bleacher, but we've
Exactly,
got
just bleacher.
that acreage whatever, footage in the middle, and then how we coordinate it all.
Coordinate and see if there's other things in there we want to look at,
Right.
or we may not want to look at. I mean, the discussion is that the architect would help us to
Ultimately, we don't know. We
understand.
don't know how much it will cost to do it.
Exactly. understand what are some of those other things, and then the board would have to discuss those options and discuss whether or not we would even want to move forward with some of those options. The architect would help us then organize that and look at what potential possibilities there could be for other pieces. Things have come up about the concession stand. Things have come up about bathroom facilities out there. We don't really know what that would mean, so the architect would help us understand what that could mean, and then we can say yes or no to those pieces of the project. I think as a board, we have recognized that we need to work on those bleachers, on Prevost Field. There is a reality too to the RFP that we sent out that was also to look at what is the bleacher situation looking at on Yankee Field, which has actually more use in a sense, I guess you could say, of what do I say, fans? What do I say, spectators coming to use. So we need to look at all those pieces and understand what does it mean at Yankee, what does it mean at Prevost. And again, there was a lot of miscommunication, and we apologize for that over, timing. We were never planning on doing the bleachers. This board had never planned on doing the bleachers this summer, and there was never planned to do the bleachers this summer. With our most recent safety inspections, our bleachers can last a few more years. With our in-house operations, doing some things that, yes, we're going to put some dollars to making sure we're fixing them up and making sure that they are, like we would any year, to make sure they are prepared for this year. Those will happen. But I think this is a better plan that Michelle has outlined that gives us the bleacher company who can do design and build and hire an architect to look at these other pieces. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a whole great plan.
So just to be clear then, the architect will help with both conceptualization of these options and also pricing. Is that correct?
The architect will just coordinate with the bleacher company. The bleacher company will do most of the oversight for the replacement of the bleachers, but they'll coordinate with the architect on certain issues that we might have to hire an outside consultant to look at. They could also help with coordinating where bathrooms would go and things like that. The bleacher company is not going to be able to do that. The bleacher company that we spoke with today recommended taking a section of the bleachers, current bleachers, out because the seating is not ideal, and then perhaps bathrooms could go there. But the bleacher company doesn't know that whether or not bathrooms can necessarily go there. That we would need the architect to help us with. So they could help with the bathrooms and meeting with the various athletic groups that use our fields to come up with what types of options we might want to consider for the future of that field.
Okay, so to answer Andrew's question, yes, so the architect would be able to help develop some of those options and help develop some of those prices for what those options. And then the board, we will need to discuss, do we want to put bathrooms out there?
Right.
I think there are really three separate issues here. There's bleachers on one field, there's bleachers on another field, and then there's the other pieces. We're going to have to decide once we have more information, are we interested in those others, and can we afford to do those others?
So just to reflect back on the miscommunication that occurred before, the misunderstanding, is it possible to state for the record, of course, asterisk always subject to change, but some kind of a broad timetable going forward so we know it's on the record what we think this plan will?
I don't think that's necessary because we already went over that. It was only really brought up by one board member who wasn't on the committee before that had some idea out of the air that we were going to do this summer. And that was never the plan. I mean,
It was
I've been
never
on
the
same
plan
committee. I've been on the
because
same
one of-
committee,
Okay,
two
but
committees for
for
3
those
years
of
now,
us who
and that
might
was
be-
never the deal. The only question I have now is, you were talking about doing it in the winter.
Yeah, I would say.
Would that actually be able to move it up? We might actually be able to get it done possibly sooner than we had actually thought.
Yeah,
But I'm the one that's having trouble understanding.
No, it wasn't
so-
you.
No, but I'm going to help you.
No, I know you are, but I'm just saying.
I don't to help you, and I think your question is a good question. So right as of now, the bleachers, I would say the soonest the bleachers on Prevost Field could potentially be done. I mean, the soonest would be the winter of 2018, possibly. I would think that would be a real push.
That would be a
I think
push.
the information that we've learned today would say that doing a winter build might be the most optimal time for pricing. So I would say what might make sense is the winter of 2019 or 2020 as we look forward. So those things will be fleshed out over the next couple of months, I think, as Michelle and Todd work with the bleacher company to look and see what are our options. Let's understand the pricing of the bleachers. So we still have some pieces that we have to put together before we can come out with that definitive and say it's winter of 2018 or it's winter of 2019.
And I'm not asking for anything definitive, I was just saying, let it be known that from this meeting on, that the bleachers on Provost, in the very, very, very least likely scenario, could be ready winter 2018, but much more likely they would be done in the winter of 2019 or the winter of 2020.
Again,
Let it be known,
depends.
hear
They
ye,
need
hear
to
ye.
see.
It's gonna depend on several factors.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna depend on several factors.
Amy's running for town crier.
I've already got that
So, is that it for you guys on the bleachers?
Yeah, that's it. I will talk with Ken and talk with Todd about whether or not we want to put permission to hire an architect on the board agenda or not, but we'll talk about that. So you may see that on the board agenda for.
You'll have to reject the RFPs on the agenda.
Yes, reject the RFPs will be on the agenda as well.
So we'll move that forward.
In the interest of time, since we're already 11 minutes late and we've got more meetings after this, I'm going to unilaterally fire, no public comment, and we are adjourned.